All right, so we are going to look at other ways that we can multiply fractions and whole numbers today. If you remember when we started, we were drawing pictures and we were talking about groups of things. And we're going to continue with that idea, but we're going to look at how we can actually use a number line or a bar model to represent our thinking. So just like we did before, we're going to look at a whole number example to give us reference of how we can use our model using familiar problems and then going from there. So Faisal earns $12 per hour. We want to know how much he makes in 3 hours. So we're going to write a number sentence. In terms of groups, right? So here we have 3 groups of 12 because he's working for 3 hours and each hour is worth $12. Or in other words, we have 3 times 12. If you remember with the number line, the one thing that we liked is the fact that we can have the number line broken up however we want. So here I have the amount of money earned in dollars, and we're going to look at how that changes compared to the number of hours worked. So we're going to have kind of like what's called a double number line. I'm going to split up my intervals by 12. And the reason I'm going to do that is because each group is worth 12. And then above that, I'm just going to designate the hours. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 hours. In this example, the top numbers would be the number of hours that are worked, and the bottom numbers, so those would be a whole number in their own right, and then on the bottom is how much money is earned for each hour that is worked. So for 3 groups of 12, we could simply make that leap from 0 to 3, and we would see that this would be $36. Down here, we can use the number line then to leap to 7, and we would see that he would earn $84 in 7 hours. All right, so we started to look at how we would use the number line using whole numbers, and now we're going to look at what happens when we have a fraction. I'm going to set up my number line using that same idea. So I'm going to go by 12s on the bottom. And whole numbers on the top. And now what I can do is, since he's trying to work for 6.5 hours, I know that what I'm taking is 6.5 and I'm multiplying it by 12. So the first part is I can take that leap to 6 hours. So I know that he's making $72 for just that 6 hours that he worked. At this point, what we can do is we can actually look more closely at that hour between 6 and 7. Since he's working a half hour, we know it's being split into 2 pieces. Well, if 12, right, is how much it's worth for the full hour, then half, right, 12 divided by 2 would be worth $6. So then what we can do is we can essentially go back to this problem and we look at that 72 plus the 6 for the additional half hour, and we would see that he made $78 for 6.5 hours of work. So now what happens if Faisal works only 3/4 of an hour? Notice we took the number line, we spread it out some. So here we have 1 hour of work, here we have 2 hours of work. Now he's only working 3/4 of an hour. I'm going to take my hour and I'm going to split it into 4 equal parts. If it's split into 4 equal parts, each part is now worth $3. So $3, this would be $6, and this would be $9. Now we can look. Here's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 of an hour. So 3/4 of an hour would be the same as $9. There is another way you can look at this besides a number line, and that's using a bar model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out a bar, and that bar is going to represent our whole. So in this case, our bar is worth $12. I'm going to section it off just like I did the number line. So I'm going to section it into 4 equal parts. And since it's 12 divided by 4, each part is worth 3. Since he only worked 3/4 of an hour, I'm just going to add those 3 parts together, and we see that it's $9. All right, so let's look at one more example here, and we're going to look at an example of Tiana working and earning $20 an hour landscaping, and we want to know how much she would earn if she worked 1 3/5 of an hour on Saturday. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and try this problem on your own. Either use the bar model or the number line. As you can see, I set up the number line a little bit for you already. If we start with the number line, since $20 is how much she makes, I'm going to set that as my interval. So we have 20, 40, 60, 80, and so on. I'm not going to go any further than that because she only worked 1 3/5 hours. So this would be 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. So if we look at a jump from 0 to 20, what that means is that she worked 1 full hour, right? So we can make that jump from 0 to 20. And then if we're looking at how do we jump 3/5 of an hour, we have to take that hour in between 1 and 2 and actually split it into our 5 parts. And if it's $20 for the full hour, we can take 20 and divide it by 5 to see that each part, or each 1/5 of an hour, is worth $4 to her. So here you'd have 24, 28, 32, 36. And since she's working 3/5 of an hour, we have 1, 2, 3, so we could see that she would earn $32. Now, if you wanted to use the bar model, we could use that same idea. What I'm going to do is we have 1 full bar that's worth 20, and then I'm going to make a second bar that I then have to split into our 5 pieces. Since the entire thing is worth 20, I'm going to do 20 divided by 5 to still get that 4. So now each part of the bar is worth 4. Since we're using 3/5, that's 3 times 4, or 12. And so we have 20 from the first hour plus 12 from the 3/5, and we still get $32 as the total.